That Christmas, Deborah looked at my 6-year-old daughter Leah and casually tossed out a sentence. A child born from your mother fooling around outside doesn't deserve to call me grandma. She said it right after Leah, full of excitement, handed her a handmade Christmas card only to have it pushed away in front of everyone. Then my son stood up. The entire room fell silent. Not just quiet, dead silent, the kind where you could almost hear the cheap ceramic angel on the mantel crack under the weight of it. I froze where I stood. My brain felt like someone had yanked the power cord. My mouth opened and closed like a fish dragged onto land, gasping under the shock. Leah is only 6. She doesn't fully understand a word like cheating, but she understood rejection perfectly. Her little face crumpled instantly, like tissue soaked through with rain, and tears fell without warning. A wave of dizziness slammed into me so hard I had to grip the back of a chair just to stay upright. Not because I was afraid of falling, because I was afraid I'd lose control, lunge forward, grab Deborah by the collar and slam her face into the Christmas desserts spread across the table. Just minutes ago, everything had been normal. At least, Deborah normal. Fake cheer stretched over something rotten at the core. The Christmas tree blinked with cheap-colored lights. Cinnamon candles battled the greasy smoke of an overcooked ham. And gifts were piled up like a commercial for holiday excess. Favoritism flowed just as freely like boxed wine at a PTA meeting. Ella went first. Christine's daughter, my sister-in-law's child about the same age as mine, the golden grandchild. She handed over a glitter-covered mug she'd painted at school, lopsided and messy, looking like it had just come out of an A visit. Deborah reacted as if she'd been handed the Holy Grail squealing, pulling Ella into a tight hug. Roger clapped beside her like a wind-up toy programmed to show enthusiasm. Then my 10-year-old son Ethan stepped forward with his gift, a simple crayon drawing of him and Deborah skiing together. More exaggerated praise. She ruffled his hair, called him a little genius, and handed him a massive gift box. Inside was a remote control car covered in flashing lights, supposedly able to climb walls, race across ceilings, even drive into space. Finally, it was Leah's turn. They had tossed her a cheap plastic doll earlier, its hair so thin it looked half ruined from a bad bleach job. Deborah gave her a tight, forced smile, the kind she only used when she couldn't be bothered to pretend, but still had to. But Leah didn't notice. She was too excited, too proud. The soft, round-cheeked little girl had spent days carefully drawing that card. She held it in both hands, eyes shining like stars, bouncing slightly on her feet like a puppy waiting for praise, and solemnly presented it. Then the world collapsed. Deborah took the card, glanced at it, then at Leah, then at me. In the sweetest, most poisonous tone, she said the sentence I will never forget for the rest of my life. A child born from your mother, fooling around, doesn't deserve to call me grandma, sweetheart. Every word hit like a slap across my face. Leah froze as if someone had pressed a pause button inside her. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled, and one heavy tear slid slowly down her cheek. The kind of tear that only comes when a child realizes the world suddenly makes no sense. Roger shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Christine wore an awkward expression, like she wanted to laugh but didn't dare. And my husband, Eli. He looked like he'd been shoved underwater, shocked, rigid, mouth opening and closing, unable to produce a single sound. As for me, my whole body was shaking. Rage climbed up my spine hotch, sharp, flooding my teeth, my fingertips, every beat of my heart. But before I could speak, before I could explode, Ethan stood up, my 10-year-old son, the perfect child in their eyes. The one who never made mistakes, who was adored by everyone. He shot to his feet, his chair screeching harshly against the wooden floor. Everyone jumped. He walked straight to Deborah, jaw tight, eyes filled with a kind of fierce clarity I had never seen before, something far too mature, something that broke my heart. He reached out, snatched back the drawing he had given her. His small hand trembled as he clenched it. Then he placed the expensive remote control car back at her feet. The entire room sucked in a breath. Even Christine went completely still. Ethan's voice was terrifyingly steady, only trembling at the edges. If my sister can't call you Grandma, then neither can I. Silence. Thick, suffocating. Crushing. Ella stared. Christine's mouth fell open. Deborah staggered back slightly as if she'd been struck. Ethan turned, gently took Leah's hand carefully, like she might shatter, and looked at me. Mom, let's go. I don't want to stay here. It wasn't a request. It was a verdict dot in that instant. Everything inside me snapped back into place. Okay, I said. We're leaving. Eli slowly stood as well. His movements were stiff, but there was something new in them, something firm. Shame, maybe. Or a delayed awakening. Or the realization that his mother had just burned down a bridge he could never rebuild. No one stopped us. No one dared. The four of us walked to the door, hand in hand like crossing a battlefield. As I reached for the handle, a cold chill crept up my spine. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Deborah's face darkened into shadow. Christine scrambled for her phone. Roger muttered a curse under his breath. We stepped out into the biting cold of December. The door shut behind us like a loaded gun. Click. If someone had told me a few years ago that Deborah would accuse me of cheating in front of my 6-year-old daughter, I wouldn't have believed it. Not because she wasn't capable of cruelty, but because I didn't think the world could be that bluntly vicious. And yet, here we are. The signs had always been there. I just kept choosing not to see them. The story really begins much earlier. I met Eli at a board game night I didn't even want to attend. I was having a terrible day, the kind that makes you replay every life decision like a highlight reel of mistakes. A friend dragged me out, saying, "There'll be food. Maybe you'll meet a cute guy." There was food. As for the cute guy dash debatable dot, then I saw him. Tall, wearing glasses, nervous, dressed in a NASA t-shirt, carefully sorting game cards by color with the seriousness of someone defusing a bomb. He looked up, adjusted his glasses, and said very seriously, "The probability distribution of this game heavily favors the first player." That was it. I was done for. Because underneath the awkward delivery and the statistics talk was someone genuinely kind. He listened. He cared deeply about things, not performatively, but sincerely. He wasn't smooth or flashy. But he made you believe every word he said mattered. Unfortunately, he was born into a family that treated sincerity like a flaw. The first time he brought me home, Deborah opened the door and looked at me like I was an overdue library book she never checked out. "Oh," she said. "You must be Claire." "Yes," I replied. "And you're Deborah?" Her smile tightened. "You're shorter than I expected." "Great start." Roger hovered behind her like a man waiting for permission to breathe. When he shook my hand, he seemed almost apologetic, like he'd spent his entire life not being allowed to think for himself. The house was filled with Eli's awards and photos, from infancy to PH displayed like a perfectly curated experiment. Dinner was a long interrogation dressed up as politeness. "What do your parents do? What did you study? Can you cook? Are you good with money? Eli's special. He needs a wife who matches him." Under the table, Eli squeezed my knee, as if to say, "I know. Just hang in there." So I did. What I didn't realize then was that I wasn't just meeting his family, I was competing with them. I only discovered he had been financially supporting them by accident. Early in our relationship, I walked past his laptop and glimpsed a bank page. I wasn't snooping my eyes, just caught it. A scheduled automatic transfer. Paying his parents' mortgage. The Christmas reckoning, "Why are you paying their mortgage?" I asked directly. I've never been good at beating around the bush. He jumped. "It's not, they just need a little help." "Eli?" I said. "You're still a grad student. You're barely scraping by on cereal most days. I have a scholarship, and the university gives me a stipend. They're really grateful." The truth was, they weren't grateful at all. Later, I saw another transfer going to his sister, Christine. "Why are you sending money to your sister too? She's between jobs right now." Between jobs was Christine's permanent life status. I didn't argue at the time, telling myself it was his money, his family, his choice. Naively, I thought it was only temporary. Looking back, it was ridiculous. Fast forward. Ally finished his master's, started his PhD, working 70 hours a week, making barely more than a high school babysitter, and still sending money home nonstop like he was supporting two ungrateful game show contestants. Eventually, he landed a high-paying job in applied science. I thought we could finally breathe. Instead, their demands only got worse. Ella's extracurricular classes, Christine's new degree, his parents' home renovations, one temporary monthly allowance after another for 6 whole years. Every time I brought it up, Eli looked at me like I was making him abandon a wounded puppy. They need help. He'd always say, "We're doing fine." We were doing fine. Because we were pinching every penny while his parents were renovating their bathroom on a whim. When Ethan was born, the world narrowed to our little boy for a while. His grandparents took to him instantly, cooing over and over. He looks just like Eli, strong genes in our family. Our family, not our child. I was so sleep-deprived back then I could barely think straight, too exhausted to argue over pronouns. 2 years later, Leah was born. As she grew, her features settled, and I saw my late grandmother in her again and again. The same gentle eyes, the same soft smile line, the same quiet, warm demeanor. My grandmother had been my only sense of security as a child, warm, steady, endlessly patient. Seeing her and Leah felt like getting her back. But the first time Deborah met Leah, she frowned. "She doesn't look anything like Ethan." "She takes after my grandmother," I said. "Oh," she replied, like she just heard the child had alien blood. "Hopefully she'd grow into our family's looks. Like a pair of shoes, like a debt. Like a flawed product that could be fixed." Then the jokes turned cruel. "You sure she's Eli's? We're just joking. Don't be so sensitive." Ethan's little Eli, but Leah, who knows who she takes after? "She takes after my grandmother." I repeated over and over. They stared at the photos, shrugged, and kept subtly implying I used the mailman's DNA to recreate my grandmother's face. The older Leah got, the less they hid their cruelty. Snide comments at birthday parties, whispered remarks at family dinners. "She really doesn't look like one of us at all. You might have to tell her the truth someday." The favoritism became blatant too. Ethan got expensive gifts, endless praise, special outings. Leah always got clearance rack leftovers, half-hearted compliments, and being overlooked. She understood. She always had. Once, Ethan's cupcake had a superhero topper and double frosting. Leah's was just a plain, tiny square. Wordlessly, Ethan split his frosting in half and pushed the topper over to her, whispering, "There we go." I had to pretend to check my phone just to keep from crying in front of everyone. I told Eli so many times. "They don't mean it," he always answered. Whether they meant it or not didn't matter. What mattered was that my daughter was learning over and over that she didn't matter. And that Christmas, she finally learned just how unworthy she was in Deborah's eyes. So when Deborah pushed Leah's drawing away and said those hurtful words, I wasn't surprised, but I was done. I didn't know it then, but she just lit the fuse on a whole storm. When we got home from the Christmas party, I thought my emotions were completely spent. Turns out, I was nowhere near finished. I tucked Ethan and Leah into our bed, put on a movie, not wanting to let them out of my sight for a second. Then I walked down the hallway, expecting to find Eli pacing anxiously, falling apart, or silent with guilt. Instead, he was sitting at his desk, still in his coat, the cold glow of the screen on his face, fingers typing like he was defusing a bomb. "Eli," I said carefully, "what are you doing?" He didn't look up, fixing things. That tone usually meant a man was about to make an irreversible decision. I stepped behind him. My heart started racing. The bank website was open. Recurring transfers, automatic payments, entries I'd never known about. Mortgage assistance, Christine's monthly living allowance, Ella's class funding. Next to each one, a single word, canceled. 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 One by one, he cut the arteries that had been feeding them for years. "Wait," I gripped the back of his chair. You're stopping all of it?" "Yes." One word, sharp and final, like a guillotine dropping. "Including your parents' mortgage, your sister's expenses, all of Ella's stuff, everything?" He still didn't look at me, jaw tight, shoulders rigid, like a stone statue. I thought of every version of Eli I'd ever known. Gentle, conflict avoidant, quick to apologize, always compromising. None of them were this man, deleting payment methods without a second thought, as if they owed him millions. This is sudden, I said, quite possibly the understatement of the century. He finally exhaled deeply and leaned back. Not in relief. In pure exhaustion. Do you know what hurt the most tonight? His voice was low. My 10-year-old son did what I should have done a long time ago. He finally lifted his eyes to me, red-rimmed, angry, and ashamed. It should have been me, he said. I should have stood up for her. I should have said something. All these years I let them talk about you, make snide remarks about Leah, but tonight, when they said that to her face, I froze. His voice cracked on the word froze. My chest tightened. I wanted to hold him, to comfort him, but he wasn't finished. Ethan shouldn't have to protect his little sister, he said. That's not his job. This was my fault, and I'm not letting it happen again. He turned back to the screen and deleted another linked card. You have no idea, he went on. How many times I lied to myself, told myself I was helping them, told myself it was temporary, told myself they'd be thankful, told myself I was doing the right thing. He let out a short, bitter laugh, full of self-mockery. They never thought I was helping them. They thought I owed them, and tonight proved it once and for all. I sat on the edge of the desk, my legs unable to hold up under the sudden emotional earthquake. So, it's over? For good? I asked quietly. He nodded. I'm not going to sacrifice my kids so my mom can insult Leah whenever she wants. I'm not paying Christine's bills so she can mock my daughter for existing. I'm not going to be their easy wallet to take out their bad moods on. I swallowed hard. Eli, they're going to lose their minds. Let them, he said. They've been losing theirs for years. It's our turn to have peace. He hit the final confirm button. The page refreshed, like an exorcism finally complete. At that moment, his phone vibrated. He stared at the screen like he'd just gotten a text from a ghost. My mom, he said. No surprise there. He answered and put her on speakerphone. No more hiding. Eli. Deborah shrieked immediately. We just got a notice the mortgage payment method was removed. Is this a bank error? What is going on? It wasn't a mistake, Eli said calmly. I deleted it. Dead silence. Then a sharp gasp, like she'd been slapped across the face by an invisible hand. What do you mean you deleted it? She snapped. You can't do this. Your dad's panicking. You pay it yourselves, Eli said. I'm not helping anymore. Are you kidding me? We sacrificed so much for you. This is what we rely on. We need that money. My eyebrows nearly shot off my face. I have my own family to provide for. We are your family, she shrieked. Is it because of her? She's turning you against us. She's brainwashing you. Shut up, Eli cut in. This has nothing to do with Claire. It's my own decision. At that moment, I wanted to kiss him right then and there. Right in the middle of the room in front of his mother, who was screaming like a malfunctioning fire alarm. You told my daughter she was a bastard, he continued. You threw her gifts back at her. You humiliated her in public. Oh, please, Deborah scoffed. She's 6. She'd forget in a heartbeat. Maybe she will, Eli said, his voice sharp as a blade. But Ethan won't, and neither will I. She went full hysterical. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You're destroying this family. You destroyed it long ago, Eli said. You just never expected me to wake up. He just hung up. Eli, the guy who used to apologize to telemarketers, had hung up on his mother. I looked at him. He was staring at the floor, his shoulders trembling slightly. Before I could say a word of comfort, the phone rang again. Christine. Oh no, I whispered. The second wave of bombardment was here. Eli answered. Eli, are you insane? She launched in immediately. Mom just called me in tears. You cut off her funds and mine too. What about Ella's classes? That's not my problem, Eli said. How could you do this? She screamed. Just because Mom made a joke? She insulted my daughter, Eli said, and you allowed it. Oh my God, Christine was frantic. It was funny. Anyone can see Leah doesn't look like. Stop. But she had to finish the sentence. You're not even sure that kid is yours. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a lung. That's it, Eli said. You're abandoning your family? She shrieked. No, Eli said calmly. I'm protecting my family. He hung up again. Then he leaned back, covered his face with his hands, and let out a long breath, a breath that felt like it had been held for 6 years. I walked over and hugged him from behind. He didn't pull away. I'm proud of you, I whispered. He stayed silent for a long time, just breathing. I was buttering toast for Leah when my phone buzzed with a message from a distant relative I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Claire, are you okay? Your mother-in-law posted something very long on social media. The tone is ... off. Reading that first thing in the morning is never a good sign. I opened the app. Pinned to the top was Deborah's post. A long, tragic monologue accompanied by a yellowed vintage photo of her holding a baby Eli, as if mourning the loved one killed in action. In her narrative, she'd been robbed of her son by a manipulative woman, deprived of financial support, and alienated from her grandson. All because she spoke a few truths everyone could see. She had been exiled. The final line was a lethal stab. We were just worried that Leah doesn't look like us at all. We just wanted to protect our son, nothing more, yet we were abandoned by our own flesh and blood. Right on cue, Christine showed up in the comments to wave the flag. This is the woman manipulating him. Love made him blind. This is what happens when you marry the wrong person. Someone had even spliced photos of Ethan and Leah together. Circling their features as if presenting criminal evidence, my stomach churned. Claire? Eli's voice came from behind me, tight with the kind of tension that could punch through drywall. I handed him the phone. He stared at the screen for a long time, his jaw muscle flexing until it looked like it might spasm. They're spreading rumors that you cheated, he said darkly. Yeah, I twisted my mouth. The Deborah Special Experience Package now comes with a public execution bonus. He rubbed his face in frustration. People actually believe them. It's absurd. Is it? I countered. She's been laying the groundwork for this story for years. She just finally has a public audience. As if on cue, my notifications exploded. Comment after comment poured in. I always thought it was weird. They should do a paternity test. Poor Eli. That girl clearly isn't his. My chest felt tight, my breathing difficult. Eli gently took my phone and set it aside, saving me from the urge to smash it into the toaster. You shouldn't have to endure this, he said softly. Tell me what you want to do. I'm on your side. I took a deep breath, my eyes turning cold. We get a paternity test. We end this once and for all. Leah didn't understand why someone was swabbing the inside of her cheek, but Eli gently told her it was a fun little science experiment. Ethan clamored to try it too, and we laughed, promising him next time. Every second of the wait felt like holding my breath underwater. It wasn't that I had a shred of doubt, but I knew that the moment the truth was exposed, Deborah's world would collapse, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. While waiting, I went back to my mother's house and dug out the dusty old photo albums. My grandmother's smiling face dominated the pages. Her gentle eyes, the curve of her smile. It was exactly like Leah's when she was happy. The resemblance wasn't a coincidence. It was bloodline continuity. If Deborah had spent 1 minute learning about my family instead of busy slandering my fidelity, she never would have said those ridiculous things. When the email with the lab results arrived, Eli and I were sitting on the sofa, my legs shaking uncontrollably. The screen read clearly, probability of paternity 99.9999%. I let out a long breath I'd been holding for what felt like forever, as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted. Congratulations, I joked lightly. You are indeed the biological father of the little girl you've raised for 6 years. He chuckled, taking my phone. Send it to me. We didn't DM Deborah. We didn't argue in her comment section. We simply each posted a status update. A collage. Leah's smiling face, a photo of Eli holding baby Leah, an old photo of my grandmother, and a side-by-side comparison of Leah and my grandmother. The caption was direct and powerful. Regarding recent rumors, here are the facts. Leah is Eli's biological daughter. The paternity test report is attached. She looks exactly like my grandmother. If anyone had taken the time to learn about my family instead of slandering my loyalty for years, they wouldn't have said such hurtful things. Someone told my 6-year-old daughter that she was a bastard child, unworthy of calling her grandma. This is why we have cut ties and stopped financial support. No one is allowed to treat a child like this. Eli reposted it with an added paragraph. Since graduate school, I have transferred approximately $500 a month to my parents and sister to meet all their financial needs, totaling $80,940. All transfer records are available. After all that, they slandered my wife and denied my daughter. We are done. Click publish. For the first 7 minutes, silence, then the internet exploded. The comments section flipped instantly. I can't believe she actually said that to a 6-year-old. Disgusting. Leah looks just like the grandma. It's obvious. So heartbreaking for you guys. Kids shouldn't have to endure this. Cutting ties was the right move. I wouldn't deal with them either. The family group chat went from noisy to dead silent, then confused, and finally everyone quietly defected. Everyone realized they had backed the wrong horse. Relatives privately messaged me apologies. Sorry, I didn't know the truth. I thought Deborah was just exaggerating. I didn't realize it was this bad. Even more satisfying? Deborah's grand birthday gala, which she'd been planning for months with invites sent to everyone, saw guests canceling one after another. Sorry, can't make it. After learning what happened, I can't support someone who treats a child that way. In the end, she was left with an expensive cake, an empty room, and a Roger who could only pretend to enjoy a party for two. Honestly, I replayed that image in my mind 1,000 times. But the real twist came a week later in a call from an unknown number. Is this Claire? The voice on the other end was steady and capable, carrying the authority of an older woman. This is she. This is Virginia, Eli's aunt. I froze instantly. We had only met twice. She was Deborah's older sister, 10 years her senior, rational, clear-headed, never as extreme as her younger sibling. I've seen your posts, and I've heard the full story from people who know, she said, her tone calm but firm. I only have one question. Did Deborah really say those things in front of the child? And is the transfer of over $80,000 real? Yes, all of it is true, I answered honestly. A long sigh came through the phone. Then I've made my decision. My heart jolted. What decision? It involves a lawyer. It involves my will, she said, enunciating every word. I've removed my sister entirely from my list of heirs. Everything she was meant to inherit has been transferred to Eli and the children. I have also established a trust fund, effective immediately. I would rather my money support a family of principles than be used to indulge cruelty and favoritism. I gripped my phone, my fingertips going numb, unable to say a single word. You don't need to see this as charity, Virginia added. This is fairness. Your children should not grow up in Deborah's malice. After the call ended, I stood there in a daze, my heart racing. Eli walked in just then. Who was that? Your aunt, I said, turning to him. You might want to sit down for this. In that moment, the balance that had been tilted against us for years finally shifted. Not because we argued louder, not because we played dirtier, but because someone had finally seen the truth and chosen to stand on the side of what was right. And the most exquisite part. This time, Deborah didn't even have the right to blame me. She had done this all to herself. What I never told anyone was that outside of this family storm, I had a final card in my hand, one powerful enough to destroy anyone who tried to come after me. I worked as a senior data compliance officer at a biotech company. On the surface, I was quiet, low profile. The kind of employee who spent years at a desk handling documentation. The new operations executive Hunter looked down on me. In his eyes, I was just an outdated relic clinging to old systems, unable to keep up with innovation. He loved buzzwords transformation, optimization, disruption. He despised compliance policies and data access controls, seeing them as obstacles rather than safeguards. What he didn't know was that I held the highest level access to the company's core database, the encryption keys for patent authorizations, and the dead man switch system for all external partnerships. Hunter had long had it out for me. More than once, he publicly humiliated me in company-wide meetings. "You're inefficient. Your thinking is outdated. Keeping you here only adds to operational costs. You're nothing but replaceable back-office staff." It didn't stop there. To impress investors, he began secretly altering experimental data, diverting R&D funds without authorization, even forging executive signatures. He tried to push through my termination so he could take full control. What he didn't know was that Deborah, in her attempt to get back at me, had secretly contacted him. She fed him exaggerated, distorted versions of my personal life, hoping he would use his authority at work to pressure me into a corner. Christine even tried to dig into my job responsibilities, looking for anything she could twist into a weapon to destroy my career. They thought that would break me. They had no idea they were walking straight into the one thing I controlled completely. During the aftermath of the Christmas incident, Hunter made his move again. At a company-wide meeting, he openly mocked my personal life, implying I was morally unfit for my role, and announced on the spot that my access privileges would be suspended. The entire room fell silent. Everyone was waiting to see me scramble, to watch me defend myself. I simply stood up, walked to the projector, and inserted a USB drive. The next second, the screen filled with evidence. Back-end logs of Hunter altering data, transaction records of unauthorized fund withdrawals, side-by-side comparisons of forged signatures, and most damning of all, his chat records with Deborah and Christine, clearly documenting their conspiracy to target me and weaponize workplace power for personal revenge. At the same time, I activated the dead man switch within the compliance system. Instantly, the company's core database locked down. All unauthorized fund flows were frozen. The banking system triggered automatic risk alerts. Every contract tied to Hunter's projects was voided in real time. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't argue. I simply let the rules enforce themselves. Hunter's face went pale. He collapsed back into his chair, trying to speak, but no words came out. The board members looked furious. On the spot, they announced his suspension pending a full legal investigation. The room was still silent, but no longer the silence of spectators waiting for entertainment. This time, it was silence born of awe. I packed my things, didn't look back, and walked out. That same day, the company's founder personally contacted me, offering a sincere apology and inviting me to return at a higher position. With full authority over data security and compliance, I declined. Not out of anger, but because I no longer needed that job to prove my worth. I had built my footing on my own expertise. I held leverage no one could take from me. I could protect my family and command respect without ever raising my voice. This is my victory, a quiet one. 6 months later, life had settled into a calm that felt almost unreal. Deborah's household, on the other hand, had completely fallen apart. After Eli cut off financial support, their lifestyle collapsed. They had to sell their large house and move into a cramped apartment. Finally forced to face the truth they had long avoided. Living off someone else's support and future inheritance was never a sustainable plan, especially when the inheritance they had counted on was no longer theirs. The trust fund Aunt Virginia established secured the children's future and gave us financial stability. We started traveling with Ethan and Leah, our first time living without constant budgeting, without being drained by extended family, free and unburdened. The peace didn't last long. Desperation eventually drove Deborah and Christine into panic. Cut off financially and disgraced among relatives, even Roger began to complain. The man who once obeyed Deborah without question was now showing cracks under the pressure of daily hardship. Christine was the first to show up. That afternoon, I was outside with Leah, drawing chalk pictures in the yard. Ethan was nearby, adjusting the telescope Aunt Virginia had given him. Eli was inside working. A beat-up second-hand car pulled up. Christine stepped out, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, none of her former polished arrogance left. Even her once expensive coat was dusty and worn. "Claire, get out here," she shouted from the gate, her voice hysterical. Haven't you done enough damage? You need to make Eli resume supporting us, or I'll go to your former company and tell everyone what a vicious woman you are. Leah flinched at the sound, instinctively hiding behind me, her small hand clutching my clothes. Ethan immediately set down the telescope and stepped in front of us, his gaze cold. You're not allowed to scare my sister, and you're not allowed to insult my mom. Christine let out a mocking laugh, her eyes sweeping over him with disdain. This isn't your business, kid. Stay out of it. At that moment, Eli stepped out of the house, his face dark with anger. He moved in front of us, his voice icy. Christine, how dare you come here? Who gave you the right to scare my children? Why shouldn't I come? She shrieked. Eli, wake up. We're your family. You can't just abandon us because of this woman. You cut us off. I can't pay rent. Ella can't attend her classes anymore. This is all your fault. You did this to yourselves, I said, stepping beside Eli, placing a hand lightly on his back to steady him. Then I looked at Christine, my voice calm but unyielding. Have you forgotten? Eli supported you for 6 years. He gave you over $80,000. You were never satisfied. You kept pushing for more. Deborah humiliated my daughter and accused me of cheating in front of her. You spread lies and tried to destroy our reputation. This is the consequence of your own actions. Consequence? Christine let out a sharp laugh, as if I told the greatest joke in the world. If it weren't for you, Eli wouldn't have turned into this. If you hadn't hoarded your resources and refused to help us with your job connections, we wouldn't be in this situation. I heard you used to hold real power at your company. If you just helped us a little, we wouldn't have ended up like this. So they still had their eyes on what belonged to me. I let out a bitter laugh, my voice dripping with sarcasm. My professional resources were earned through my own expertise and hard work. They have nothing to do with you. Why don't you mention how you teamed up with Hunter to sabotage me to ruin my career? Now that you're backed into a corner, you come begging for help. Do you really think that's possible? Christine's face drained of color at once, her eyes darting away. She clearly hadn't expected me to call her out so directly. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she snapped her head up and shouted, I don't care. You have to help us. Or I'll expose every private thing about you and Eli and make your lives miserable too. Go right ahead, Eli stepped forward, his voice icy. We have nothing to hide. But you, spreading false rumors, plotting against your own family, teaming up with outsiders to destroy Claire, we have evidence of all of it. If you dare to publish anything, we'll hand everything over to the police. You won't just be publicly disgraced. You'll face legal consequences. Christine panicked completely. She stared into Eli's unwavering gaze and knew he wasn't bluffing. Her shoulders slumped, her tone shifting from arrogance to desperate pleading. Eli, I'm sorry, I really am. Just help us one more time, please. Just this once. I'll never ask you for another penny, never slander Claire again, never bully Leah, I promise. Too late. Eli shook his head, his tone unyielding. From the moment you and Mom started spreading lies about Leah, there was nothing left between us. Get out. Don't show up here again, or we'll call the police. Christine tried to say more, but Eli's cold stare forced her back. She bit her lip, shot me a venomous glare, then finally turned and fled in a hurry, climbing into her beat-up secondhand car and speeding away. Watching her disappear, Leah tugged gently at my sleeve. Mom, is she going to come back? I'm scared. I knelt down and held her softly. No, baby. Daddy and your brother will always protect us. She can't hurt us anymore. Ethan knelt down too and patted Leah's head. Don't be scared, sis. I've got you. Eli walked over and wrapped his arm around the three of us, his gaze gentle but firm. From now on, no one will ever hurt you again. We thought after Christine's failed visit, Deborah would stay away. But a week later, Deborah and Roger showed up at our front door. It was the weekend, and we were about to take the kids for a picnic in the park. Deborah wore an overly fancy dress that looked out of place, yet it couldn't hide the exhaustion and embarrassment in her eyes. Roger followed behind her, head bowed, looking defeated. Eli, Claire, please, help us. Deborah dropped her usual sharpness, her voice humble and close to tears. We really have nowhere else to turn. The house is sold. Our savings are gone. Roger's pension isn't enough to live on. I just don't know what else to do. Roger lifted his head too, his eyes pleading. Eli, for the sake of us being your parents, just help us one more time. We'll do better from now on. No more favoritism. No more lies about Claire and Leah. Eli looked at them with a complicated expression. I knew a small part of him still softened. They were his parents, after all. But I also knew that showing kindness to greedy people was cruelty to ourselves. I squeezed Eli's hand gently, giving him a determined look. He took a deep breath and turned to Deborah and Roger, his voice calm but unshakable. Dad, Mom, I will help you once, but this is the final time. I'll give you enough money to rent a small place and cover basic living expenses. But after this, I won't give you another cent, and we will have no further contact. Deborah lit up immediately, nodding frantically. Yes, we promise. We won't bother you again. We won't make you angry ever again. Eli said no more. He turned back inside, fetched a sum of cash, and handed it to her. Deborah snatched the money and stuffed it into her bag without a single sincere thank you, then dragged Roger away in a rush, as if afraid we might change our minds. Watching them leave, Eli sighed softly. I know this might not be right, but I can't just stand by and watch them end up on the streets. I understand. I held his hand gently. You've done more than enough. This time we've done our duty. From now on, we focus only on our own lives, and we won't waste another thought on them. Eli nodded and held me tightly. We thought that would be the end of it. But we should have known. Deborah and Christine never understood the meaning of gratitude. Instead of keeping their promise to behave, they took the money and decided Eli was still soft enough to be manipulated. Christine secretly contacted Aunt Virginia, lying that Eli and I had abused her and Deborah, and that we had stolen an inheritance that rightfully belonged to them. She tried to turn Aunt Virginia against us, hoping to reclaim the inheritance. But she forgot that Aunt Virginia had already seen their true colors. Aunt Virginia didn't fall for her lies. Instead, she sent us screenshots of their entire conversation and called us furious. Claire, Eli, don't worry. I don't believe a word of it. I've seen through this sister of mine for good, greedy and vicious. She'll never get anything from me again. Not only that, Aunt Virginia hired a lawyer and issued an official statement declaring that her entire estate would be inherited solely by Eli and the children. Deborah and Christine were entitled to nothing. She also handed over evidence of Christine's defamation to the police to pursue legal action. When the police notified her, Christine completely broke down. She had lost all financial support in her claim to the inheritance and now faced a defamation lawsuit. Ella was mocked at school over the scandal and had to transfer. When Deborah heard the news, the shock made her fall seriously ill. Roger, watching the family fall apart and seeing Deborah bedridden and helpless, finally snapped. He argued with her violently, packed his things, and moved out, never to return. The family that had once appeared respectable, leeching off Eli together, finally collapsed from greed and cruelty, ending up alienated and with nothing. For us, after everything, life grew quieter and happier. Aunt Virginia visited often. She adored Leah and Ethan, bringing them gifts every time and telling us stories from her youth. She taught me many things, explaining that real family is never about blood ties, but mutual respect and protection. I quit my old job and, using my professional skills, opened a small data compliance consulting firm. It wasn't large, but it thrived. I no longer had to answer to anyone or endure unfair treatment and sabotage at work. Eli continued to excel in his field, growing more confident and resolute, no longer the timid man who only compromised and pleased his family. He made time for the kids, shared housework willingly, and supported me warmly whenever I felt tired. Ethan grew more responsible. He excelled in school and continued to look after Leah, becoming her strongest protector. He often drew and read with her, comforting her gently whenever memories of Deborah's cruelty resurfaced, telling her she was the sweetest, most lovable child in the world. Leah fully left her past behind, growing cheerful, confident, and lively. She loved painting and nature, often drawing her grandmother and our happy family together. Her smile was like light, brightening our entire home. On weekends, we took the kids to picnics in the park, camping in the countryside and watching sunsets by the sea. We cooked together, watched movies, talked, and enjoyed the peaceful happiness of our little family. Occasionally, we heard updates about Deborah and Christine through distant relatives. Deborah, after recovering, survived on small, occasional sums of money from Roger, living in poverty. Christine was given a suspended sentence for defamation and ordered to pay heavy damages, working odd jobs to get by, never regaining her former arrogance. When we heard these things, we felt no satisfaction, only calm closure. We understood that everyone pays for their choices. Deborah and Christine didn't end up this way because of our revenge, but because of their own greed. Cruelty and endless greed